never forget the sound of that branch snapping under my foot, the sharp crack that echoed through the silent forest like a gunshot. I'd been photographing it for almost 30 minutes, this massive creature sleeping peacefully in its carefully prepared den. My camera capturing what I thought was the discovery of the century, the proof that would change everything. Then its eyes opened. Not gradually like a human waking from sleep. Instantly, from deep rest to total alertness in a fraction of a second. And those eyes, dark, intelligent, aware, turned directly toward my hiding spot, directly at me. In that frozen moment, I understood. It knew I was there. It knew what I'd been doing. And the look in those eyes wasn't anger or fear. It was disappointment, as if it had hoped somehow that this place was safe, that humans wouldn't find it here. That was 40 years ago. And I've never told anyone what really happened that night in 1984, until now. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 73 years old now, and I've been retired from professional photography for almost 8 years. These days, I spend most of my time in my small cabin in Vermont, drinking coffee and watching the birds at my feeder. But there's a story I've never told anyone, not my ex-wife, not my colleagues, not even my son. It's a story from 40 years ago, 1984 to be exact, when I was 33 years old, and still believed that the perfect photograph could change the world. This is what really happened in the forests of Washington State that September, and why the greatest photograph I ever took is one the world will never see. In 1984, I was hungry for recognition. 3 years into my wildlife photography career, I'd published in regional magazines but wanted more. When Wilderness Watch offered me a 6-week assignment photographing old-growth forests in the Cascade Mountains, I jumped at it. The access was golden, permits for areas rarely photographed, deep wilderness untouched by logging. I flew into Seattle in early September, rented a truck, and drove into the mountains. This was before cell phones and GPS, just topographic maps, a compass, and the confidence of being 33 and immortal. My base camp was 15 miles from the nearest road. I packed in everything: tent, sleeping bag, food, and 60 pounds of camera equipment. Nikon F3, 3 lenses, 30 rolls of Kodachrome 60. Everything was film back then. The forest was magnificent. Ancient western red cedars, so massive, 3 men couldn't link hands around them. Paradise for a landscape photographer. The first 10 days were productive. I captured beautiful images of mist through the canopy, black-tailed deer, Roosevelt elk. Good professional work. But I wanted the shot that would make my name. Then I started noticing oddities, a feeling of being watched. Movement in peripheral vision, branches broken at 8, 9 feet high. And the silence, sudden, absolute silence, when every bird, every squirrel, every creature would freeze simultaneously for 30 seconds. I dismissed it as imagination. Too many campfire stories about wild men from the loggers in town, Sasquatch folklore, nothing more. But on September 13th, 1984, I found the footprint. I was hiking a game trail 3 miles from camp when I saw it in soft mud beside a creek. 18 inches long, 7 inches wide, 5 distinct toes, deep heel impression showing bipedal walking, stride pattern of nearly 6 feet between steps. My heart hammered. This wasn't bear, wasn't human, wasn't anything I'd seen in 3 years of professional wildlife. I photographed it from every angle, set my camera bag beside it for scale, measured exact dimensions, burned an entire roll of film documenting this one piece of evidence. Then I decided to follow the trail. The rational choice was to report this and let experts handle it. But I was 33, ambitious, and looking at possibly the discovery of the century. I went back to camp, grabbed my 300mm lens and minimal supplies, left a note with coordinates, and set off tracking. I followed those prints for 7 hours. Deeper into forest, so dense, the canopy created perpetual twilight. The tracks led upward toward a rocky outcropping, limestone cliff with natural overhang. perfect shelter. I approached the way I'd learned stalking mountain gorillas, every step calculated, no sudden movements, camera ready. And then I saw the den. The overhang created a space 20 feet deep, 15 wide, 8 feet high. Perfect natural protection. But what was inside made my hands tremble. This wasn't just an animal's den. The floor was covered with deliberately arranged bedding. Cedar bark stripped carefully to expose the soft inner layers, moss gathered and piled in specific areas for cushioning, ferns layered on top and still relatively fresh. Replaced regularly, it seemed. Not scattered randomly like a bear's nest. Arranged, thoughtfully, like a human would prepare a bed for comfort. In one corner sat organized food remains, and I mean organized, not the chaos of animal feeding. Nutshells in one distinct area, hazelnut shells cracked cleanly, acorn caps, fish bones in another section, cleaned meticulously and stacked with care, fruit pits in a third pile, apple cores, cherry pits, berry seeds, separated, categorized. Someone had spent time organizing this, thinking about it. On the rock wall were marks. At first I thought they might be random scratches from claws, but as my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I saw patterns, repeated symbols, lines intersecting at specific angles, circles within circles. Not art exactly, but deliberate marking, communication, record-keeping, decoration, couldn't tell, were intentional. And in the center of the bedding area, a clear depression where something massive had been sleeping recently. The cedar bark was compressed from body weight. The moss still held the shape, and when I carefully touched the surface, I know I shouldn't have, but I couldn't resist, it was still slightly warm. This was evidence of intelligence, of culture, of planning and aesthetic sense, of consciousness, operating at a level I'd never imagined possible in a supposedly undiscovered species. I began photographing frantically but quietly, wide shots, everything. The light was fading. I had maybe 20 minutes left. Then I heard movement, something large pushing through brush, heavy footfalls, coming closer. It was returning home. I had seconds to decide. The photographer in me overrode survival instinct. I found position behind a fallen log 20 yards from the den. Perfect natural blind with clear sightline. I set up my 300mm. The light was terrible, but it would have to do. I pre-focused on the den entrance and waited. The sounds grew closer. Then it appeared. 8 feet tall, maybe 8.5. Difficult to judge precisely, but definitely over 8 feet. Massive shoulders broader than any humans, broader even than the silverback gorillas I'd seen in photographs from Africa. Arms reaching nearly to its knees, suggesting tremendous strength and a different skeletal structure than humans. The entire body covered in reddish-brown hair, not fur like a bear's, but actual hair, thick and shaggy, hanging in natural patterns that moved as it walked. The head was distinctively shaped, cone-like with a pronounced sagittal crest running from front to back along the skull, similar to male gorillas, but more pronounced. The face was remarkably flat in profile, almost human in its proportions, but with heavy brow ridges casting shadows over wide flat nose with large nostrils. The jaw was heavy, but not protruding like an ape's. It walked completely upright, not the bent-over shuffle of a gorilla, not the occasional bipedalism of a bear standing to look around, fully erect posture with a human-like gait, just with a much longer stride that covered ground efficiently. And it carried food, skunk cabbage, fiddlehead ferns, a large salmon, cradled like a human, carries groceries. I began shooting, the motor drive whirring. Frame after frame, the creature showed no reaction. It entered the den, set down food deliberately, placed, not dropped, added plants to an existing pot, laid the fish on a flat rock. Then it knelt beside the bedding and began arranging it, fluffing cedar bark, smoothing compressed sections, adding fresh moss. The care, the attention to comfort. This was conscious behavior, intelligent. I photographed everything, professional training overriding wonder and fear. The creature finished prepared, sat cross-legged facing the forest, made sounds, low-frequency rumbles and clicks, modulated, varied, purposeful communication. For 10 minutes it sat there making occasional vocalizations. Then it lay down on its carefully prepared bed, curled on its side, adjusted the ferns around itself like pulling up a blanket, and closed its eyes. I waited 30 minutes. The creature's breathing became deep and it was asleep. I should have left then, should have been content with documenting but I wanted one more shot, a close-up, undeniable proof. I moved, shifting position carefully, and stepped on a dry branch. The crack echoed like a gunshot. The creature's eyes opened instantly, head turned directly toward me, and our eyes met. I'd photographed dangerous animals before. I know what animal eyes look like. This was different. These eyes were aware, conscious, intelligent. It knew exactly what I was, understood I had been watching, photographing, invading its home. And I saw something that haunts me 40 years later. Disappointment. Not anger, not fear. Disappointment. As if it had hoped this place was remote enough that it could finally have peace, that humans wouldn't find it here. And I had proven that hope wrong. We stared at each other for maybe 5 seconds. In those seconds, I understood this wasn't just an undiscovered animal. This was a person. Different, but a person with thoughts, feelings, the simple desire to be left alone. Then it rose to full height, turned its back, and walked away from the den into the darkening forest, away from its carefully prepared bed, away from its organized food, away from its home, because I had found it, because it was no longer safe. I listened to the sounds of its passage fade until there was only silence. I stood there long after it had gone, looking at that empty den, at the bedding that would go unused tonight, at the food stores representing patient intelligence, and I understood what. I made it back to camp after midnight. Didn't sleep. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I hiked out, developed all the film, spent 3 days in a motel while the lab processed everything. When I picked up the photographs, I spread them across the bed. Hundreds of images from 6 weeks, and there they were. Dozens of perfect photographs of the creature. Clear, detailed, undeniable proof. The den, the organized storage, the bedding, the creature itself, face visible, every feature clear, carrying food, arranging its bed. Proof that would change science, make my career, put my name in history. I looked at those photographs for hours, especially one close-up of its face. You could see intelligence in those eyes, consciousness, personhood. And I remembered that look of disappointment. I thought about what would happen next. Media frenzy, expeditions, hunters claiming to be researchers, harassment, invasion, loss of the last wild spaces as people trampled through looking for proof. This being had asked for nothing, only to be left alone, to sleep in peace, to live quietly in deep wilderness. I gathered all photographs of the creature, every single one, and I burned them. Not threw away, burned. In a metal trash can in the motel parking lot. Watched the film curl and blacken. Watched the discovery of the century turn to ash. I kept one photograph, not of the creature, a wide shot of the empty den, evidence of intelligence without identifying the inhabitant. I have it still, locked in my Vermont cabin. I look at it sometimes. It reminds me of the most important lesson of my 41-year career. Some discoveries are more valuable when they remain secret. Some beings deserve privacy more than we deserve recognition. Some photographs, the most important one, are the ones we choose not to share. I'm 73 now. My photography career ended with 3 National Geographic covers and a comfortable retirement. None of those achievements meant as much as what happened in 1984. I think about that creature sometimes, wonder if it found a new den, a safer place. The forests have shrunk in 40 years. Logging pushed deeper. GPS made remote places rare. I wonder if sanctuaries still exist. I hope so. Because that's all it wanted, just peace. the quiet dignity of a life lived without human interference. I gave it that gift by staying silent, by burning the proof, by letting the mystery remain. That creature taught me something when our eyes met, about respect, about boundaries, about the cost of human curiosity and the value of restraint. I became a better photographer after that, more thoughtful about what I chose to capture and what I left undocumented. More aware that my right to photograph didn't mean I should, but more than that, I became a better person. Because I learned that sometimes the greatest achievement isn't what you capture, it's what you protect. Somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, smaller forests now, more fragmented, but still wild in places, I hope there's a creature sleeping peacefully tonight, in a carefully prepared den with thoughtfully stored food, living the quiet life it chose. And I hope it never meets another human with a camera, because some mysteries are more beautiful unsolved. Some beings deserve the simple gift of being left alone. That's what I learned in 1984, and I've never regretted it. Not for a single day in 40 years.